talking about poverty, the politicians take the advantage of poverty, and we talk about the system. Now we know that these charlatans, these are there. Now number one is how do we take them out? We talk about changing system, the structure, the practical step. Now from CVL, what step do we take? How do we handle that? Because we know that we are not the one to up there now, they are the people want to take out of the way. So the practical step, number one, and then if they are maximizing they are taking advantage of people as for poverty, then how do we answer it, especially for the new political parties now, because you know that okay, the big parties are there and they are in control, they are taking advantage of poverty. Then should you just go ahead and campaign and there are no other approach? What do we do? The practical step to take in order to deal with the issue of poverty, and then we talk about orientation. National Orientation Agency will try to, or we say that on our own, how do we really, are there steps that we can take one-on-one, that we can be able, are there materials like for people in the grassroots? Is there any way we can, that CVL can partner with people who have access to the grassroots, to be able to reach out and to be able to change people's mentality about this thinking?
Politics came about in the process of trying to distribute wealth and resources evenly to the people. That was the origin of politics. Okay, let's try and bring some leaders together who will help us to distribute these resources evenly to the people through zoning and geographical means and all that, but the reverse is the case. These resources we have seems to be in a particular spot and it's not well and evenly distributed. That's the cause of the poverty. You will agree with me. Some people, it's like it's being monopolized by a set of people, and it is now working against the purpose for which politics came about. These resources, if sometimes you say, okay, look at the Abacha loot and how much millions of dollars they are still trying to get back from here. And some people will just look at it, okay, if they can distribute this even at 1 million naira to each citizen, it will still do what? It will still go around. I keep laughing when people say that. Fine. The problem is that some people monopolize these resources. Then the solution will not be how do we get this thing to go round? That's to be I'm a realist to an extent and an idealist to an extent. How do we now get this thing from these people and let it go round? First of all, the people has to be aware. It is what you are aware of that you can fight for. Am I right? If you don't have knowledge of the thing, ignorance is a killer disease, fine. If you are not aware of the thing that, okay, this is the problem, this is where our resources is. Like in Ogun State, I was campaigning for a particular candidate in the last election. I was the head media for him. Now, it came to the people that yearly 600 million is allocated for central senatorial district of Ogun State for a particular people. None of them knew about it. And this 600 million naira per year would have done a lot of things. Fine. Awareness. The people need to be aware of what are the things that you are entitled to. That's one way to eradicate poverty. How? What are the things we are entitled to? What are the people holding this thing down? How can we get it from them? Not just getting it from them. If you distribute this money, in a week some people would have spent it. But we need to know how to make use of this thing to create more wealth. Privatization. You can't just say because there's unemployment that the solution will automatically be to create jobs. How do you create jobs? When these resources come, then we need to, help the people to create more industry where people who are interested in white collar job can go. I'm an entrepreneur and I'm participating in the diversification of the economy. How? Through exportation of agro commodities to other countries. So I'm also looking at the government removing bottlenecks, for the entrepreneurs. Because people now are now getting tired of paid jobs and salaries. They want to be an entrepreneur, but they are what? They are bottlenecks. So to get out of hunger, you also to eradicate poverty, you also have to encourage entrepreneurs. Now you told me to come and come and participate in the diversification of the economy. Yes, things are not so easy for me. Take for example transportation. In like 7 years back, we normally pay 170,000 from Lagos to Oyo to help us pick our goods. But as of today, if you ask me, it's $500,000. What has caused the increase? So those are the solutions. We have to identify the problem. The people have to be aware. Then the government have to encourage and create a very conducive environment for entrepreneurs.
Thank you very much, Jiman. Just 1 minute.
Yes, it's unfortunate there's a serious time constraint, but let me go ahead and tell you that in the beginning there was poverty for everybody. Nobody here was born rich. In the ocean, all fishes were the same until others started swallowing the others. And as the ones continued to swallow, they got fatter and were able to also dominate the sea. That is the way this issue of distribution of wealth became so lopsided that those who have dug in ingratiate themselves and reinforce their position. Having tasted the good, they don't want to go. So behavior is defined generally by either fear of poverty or poverty, or attempt to get out of it. Those who are rich don't want to go back to poverty. Those who are poor want to get out of it. So it's a rat race. So how do we now get out? Time is constrained. The mass education is a long-term process, because if you educate somebody, you liberate the person. The global world becomes the person's stage. So once the level of mobility is high, the level of poverty will reduce. If you have 13 people in a family struggling for one tuber of yam, as they grow, their stomach and capacity will increase. And so it will be an intensifying warfare to kill themselves for food, to enjoy the yam. So if you allow them to scatter, equipped educationally, they will fend for themselves. In the short run, for example, now, we need knowledgeable leadership. And why I don't want to talk too much is that my allegory of pot of soup is coming together. Nigeria is coming together because we are now united in one problem: poverty. Poverty of the north is the same poverty of the south, of the west. And so the poor man, the only thing is that there is the one that is called abject poverty. The abject poverty is the one that makes you must beg. Sometimes they don't have the sense to steal because they don't have the brain to find a way to exit if they steal. So when we are finally united in our poverty, relative poverty speaking, we will decide to do the right thing. And it is in tune with nature. You can never die of hunger. Instead, you eat fresh frog or you chop sand. That is homeostasis for you. When the thing gets to extreme, we will take a decision in this country without regards to whether you are Igbo, Yoruba, Hausa, or we are coming to that because this country is getting lower and lower, and few people want to go down to the bed of the river, so want to escape. So poverty will be resolved by itself if we don't even do something to move it faster.
Okay. I take a very, very different opinion. I think the poverty we have in Nigeria is poverty of our minds. It is not poverty in the sense of we don't have money. The truth of the matter is that we can feed. But in Nigeria, when we say we're poor, we compare ourselves to the person who's doing party and doing HLB, because I cannot do this HLB, I'm poor. That is the way we define poverty. What is they are in Nigeria? The poverty is not that you can't eat, and that's the honest truth. I was using an example when I was talking about Makoko. They keep saying that Makoko is poor. I can count the amount of international recognition that Makoko has gotten. The amount of NGOs that have gone in there. The amount of churches that go in there monthly and weekly to feed the people. And they have remained poor. Because their minds are big, their mindset. So in Nigeria, poverty is not poverty, physical poverty. our poverty is poverty of mind. And I keep saying, even during the elections, the people that came out to vote were the people that 500 naira will make a difference for. And how many were they? In 2 days where I contested, the person who won the election won with 14,000 votes. In a scenario where we had 150,000 people holding PVCs in their hands, we had less than 22,000 people coming out to vote. And those were the people that I would say are poor because they wanted to collect 500.
Okay, let's go.
Forgive me.
Really?
The rest of the people, the rest of the 120,000 people, the rest of the 70% of people who are not poor, who are supposed to make the difference, did not step up. I'm sorry, our poverty is of the mind. It's not physical poverty.
Can you pass the mic to I please you close the deal. Just 1 minute, please.
Yeah, I'll try and make it brief. You see, what we're talking about is how we lift people out of poverty. I mean, it's we're not going to be the first country to have done that. India had a policy to lift up to 80 million people out of poverty. China had the same thing. So, in other words, my take is this: there has to be deliberate policy that gears towards lifting people, because poverty, that word poverty, is a demography of certain people that are either not privileged or don't know how to make a living. So the government, that's where we talk about the government. The government must have a deliberate policy that pushes towards that end, so that people can have work when they're looking for jobs. And that comes to education. People need to be educated, and so forth and so on. So that is just my take. It's not a matter of whether we are poor in the mind or we are poor in the poverty is poverty.
Well, first and foremost, there's a problem of ignorance in this country. This problem of ignorance feeds into those primordial issues of ethnicity, religious bigotry, that this person is my own faith, and so on. Ignorance is lack of knowledge. It's not necessarily a lack of education in terms of formal education. You can be a PhD holder and you are still held captive by those primordial. So ignorance makes people think in a way that they can harm themselves. So if we have massive public education, that what we are doing and the way we think in this country is hurting the country and naturally hurting the citizens, there will be some degree of relief. But more importantly is the issue of the right leadership. The right leadership means the leadership that has knowledge of the problems of this country and made a spirited effort by taking steps, getting people who know it. No government knows everything. But if the government makes a very deliberate effort to get people who know, assemble them to advise on the best way to go about it, and diligently and selflessly implement those things. How would you want to promote unity in the country when on your own policy as a government you are talking about state of origin, your ethnic group and all that, so that you use that as a determinant to give jobs and dispense privileges? That will not augur well for the thinking of the younger elements who see themselves in relationship with their mates, that the other ones has more advantage than himself, even when he has worked hard more. I cannot see a situation where you will have peace where there is no equity. There is no equity in this country. There is what we call equality is equity in law. All fingers are not equal, but they are in harmony. Each one has been allotted a function. If you cut it, that function fails. Even if there is what we in the psychologists call a lateral plurality of function.
Every morning, I started off with writing, emancipate yourselves from mental slavery. And if you know that song, that Bob Marley song, it says, emancipate yourself from mental slavery. None but ourselves can free our mind. So you see, the thing is a thing of the people. We have to understand that we have mentally enslaved ourselves. And until we get to that level, the average Nigerian man has been pushed to a corner where he constantly wants to take. All he's thinking about is, how do I get out of this person? How do I get out of this person? And and that's what I kept on telling people during the election. Why have you been reduced to beggars? You want to talk to somebody, the person says, how much are you going to give me? And I keep telling them, I said, why are you still voting for people who have turned you into beggars? We've become a nation of beggars, begging for 500 naira, begging for 1,000 naira. We have to realize as a people that we are better than this. Nigerians used to be very prideful people. Do you understand? And somewhere along the line, we lost our pride.
So if you look at the constitution of Nigeria, a lot of power is vested in the federal government. We have something called the exclusive legislative list, where the federal government has so much power. In fact, the states are almost beggars. The states, they only have rights under the residual list, which is like chieftaincy title. The state cannot even tax. They don't control education. We have to decentralize power. We're diverse people, and right now the federal government owns all the resources: crude oil, tin, iron, whatever. That doesn't scale. Yeah. So we're one country. What we need to do is let the taxation and the education, everything happen at the local level, and let us pay tax to the federal government, instead of the federal government taking everything and then deciding what to give us. So right now we have an unsustainable federal government where we're borrowing money to fund old debts and to also pay salaries of civil servants. We hardly have any money for capital projects. So all these things have to be changed. And the way to change them is to look at other countries. Okay. Switzerland has a very good model whereby they allow local autonomy. So that's what we need in Nigeria.
Well, from the conversation we've had today, one of the issues that came out clean and clear on how to minimize corruptive tendencies in the electoral processes in Nigeria is to make the system more transparent and let the electoral legal framework ensure that those persons who get elected are accountable to the people. With that, if the internal democracy is deepened in the political parties, implying that the right candidates emerge from the parties, the possibility of right leaders emerging across the party platforms is higher. The thinking orientation is that if internal democracy is deepened in the parties, the possibility of the right candidates emerging across the board is very high. And with that, if you get the right people elected, the right people are likely to do the right things, and that will have indirectly minimized corruption. In deepening party democracy to also reduce the abuse of money in allowing candidates to emerge, which implies that it's people who really want to serve that will be thrown out by the political parties and not those who are out there for commercial interests.